This is really quite simple. There's a 3-part story formula, and it always starts with the beginning, and it has a middle, and then there is an end. All right. Now, that in of itself is not literary genius right there, my friends. But it's important to remember that it's got to have the basics, right? You got to have the fundamentals in place. The real genius is not that there's a beginning, middle, and an end. It's what goes at the beginning, what goes in the middle, and what goes in the end. So let's talk about that. Remember, these are stories that actually happened, and every good story, every event happens somewhere, some when, to someone. So you want to start your story just giving us that basic context. When is this? Where is this? Who's there? That is a cue to the audience that the story is starting. You don't actually need to say, well, let me tell you a story and then start the story. You just start. When you start the story with the some where, some when, and some one, you will let them know without telling them that this is a story. They will get it. Remember, they're fluent in the language of story as well. So give us the setup, the setting, the scene. Tell us who's there and when it's happening, where it is, and we'll know that a story is happening. Now, the middle of this is the what happened. That is the external and internal action. It's the things that were visible. You know, she walked over to the bar and I said, right? It's also the things that are invisible, the internal dimensions of the story. It's the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings, the body sensations, whatever is appropriate. You don't want to overdo this detail, but you want to narrate both the internal and the external action. Now, the most important ingredient for the middle part of the story is some point of tension. And let me break this out a little bit further. There needs to be some conflict or some dilemma or some crisis or obstacle or breakdown or challenge. There's got to be something that drives the energy of the story, some tension. This doesn't have to be off the charts crazy. In fact, the story that I share in my example is not a hugely traumatic thing, right? I think too many times we've been conditioned to think that only the maximum drama is the story's worth telling. And listen, if you have a very dramatic story, then sometimes that's going to be true. But, not everything is like, again, remember, it's not all epic. Okay, it's sometimes just simple things that happen in the course of everyday life, but they might have significant consequences. So in any case, there needs to be some point of tension, whether it's a high stakes thing, it's life or death, or whether it's, a lower stakes but still significant thing about embarrassment, humiliation, miscommunication, an actual breakdown, like being stranded somewhere and getting lost. Whatever the thing is, that's where the tension comes from. So you tell us what happened and you make sure that you are very clear about that tension, the conflict, the dilemma, the breakdown, or whatever. All right? And then the ending of your story is the outcome. Something changed and it was you. And that change was usually internal. So what was that internal change, right? What shifted? Tell us that. Share the insight or the decision that you made that changed things for you. Share the lesson that you learned. Again, a lesson about your own humanity or about human nature itself, or something that people can relate to because that lesson is true for them as well. Share the new direction that you took or whatever the outcome was of that story, right? And that's the simple 3-part structure for a story. Have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and put these core elements in whatever way is a good fit for your actual event. Just make sure that you put them in each section.